Cool. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Morning.
Nice. All right. You guys excited to be here?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, I'm not a lecturer, so I'm not used to doing lectures, and I find them boring. So I'm going to try to, at some point, get as much involvement as possible. One, I enjoy discussions more, and two, just to know kind of what you guys are interested in. So I'm going to just take like 5 minutes really quick and just give a bio, bullet points of things that I've done that relate to the industry, so you can kind of get an idea of what industry experience I have. So think about like what kind of questions you want to talk about. And then I'm guessing, who here is a game designer? Everyone? Almost everyone. Okay. So and I'm assuming people might want to talk about game design too. So bio, I'm Dominic, Crapuchettes. Is there a microphone, or is this just echo?
It's just echo. Yeah, I didn't want to do AV if you were small enough room.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm Dominic, Crapuchettes. I'll go through kind of my bio. I founded North Star Games, but I'm going to go through just kind of a little bit of some milestones in my life. So things that I think were relevant. My family didn't watch TV pretty much at all. We played board games 3 times a week. So as a little kid, I was just always kind of designing games. I have games that I designed in 5th grade still, like sitting in my folder. 6th grade, 7th grade. In 8th grade, I designed a game that got banned from school because too many classmates were playing it during class. I designed an RPG in high school, ran a campaign. My final economics paper was a business plan to start a board game company. I look at it now, it's not really a business plan at all. And in fact, I don't know why I'm doing that in an economics class, but that's what I did. Did not start a company like I wanted to. Ended up taking over my parents' operations at Crapuchettes fishing boat in Alaska for about 12 seasons. Paid my way through college. Played on a pro tour while I was in college. Won like $30,000 doing that. Finally, at some point, decided I wanted to jump ship and start North Star Games. I went to business school. Actually, before that, I organized the very first game designer convention in the United States. Some of you may have heard of Protospiel. So this was kind of a model that was being done in Germany. And I organized the very first one I'm just looking at John back there, who organized the first Unpub in 2001. Went and got an MBA specifically to start a board game company, kind of came in with a business plan and find a business partner. Found an amazing partner who has been working at North Star Games ever since we graduated in 2004. We are now 22 people at the company. Nick is working with us. Hey, Nick. We spend crazy amount of time refining games over and over again, doing a lot of testing. Nick can attest to it. It's not just a marketing spiel. We're kind of fanatic about it. Our business model, or our model, is not to put out a whole bunch of games. It's to really refine one game until we think it's good enough to really kind of take off and rise above. And our goals, my personal goal, is to create games that resonate with people enough that it gets passed down to the next generation. So we're really looking to try to create evergreens. So anything you hear from me coming on game design will be kind of with that framework. Like, it's valid to create a game that's for a specific niche, but that's not what I'm not a great person to talk about that, because I'm always looking at how do you get past that niche and how do you reach more people with your games. I've designed Wits and Wagers, Say Anything, and Evolution. So those are kind of the 3 big brands that I've done. Combined, they've sold about 2.5 million copies. So they've been pretty successful. So those are just all things I can give. Like I've got. If you have questions, I can answer industry questions, growing company, entrepreneurship, raising money, marketing. I have my hands, Kickstarter, manufacturing in China, supply chain, all of those things, and then game design all fit under kind of the things that I've spent time doing. So yeah.
What was the theme of the 8th grade game that got banned from school?
It was called Kabloogie. It was a war game. It was kind of a mix of Stratego, and it had actually action points. way back before action points were a thing. And you had four action points on your turn. And it was basically you created your Stratego side kind of, and they created their Stratego side. And then you'd take your turn on graph paper, and then you'd give it to your friend, and then they didn't listen to like the lecture, and then they just played, and then they'd pass it off class to class. So yeah, I'd love to know what people want to hear about. Yeah, Luke.
What do you think is the key point in a game that goes from niche to evergreen? Like, when do you feel like a game's gotten to that point? Like, what are you looking for?
So the way I look at it is I look at it like an artist would look at a piece of art. So I'm trying to do something that resonates with people, and people have fun in different ways. Lots of different ways to have fun. And so one of the things on the party game side is, what are people doing when they're having fun? Just trying to figure out what is that activity that's fun, and then figure out how can I create a game where they're doing that activity, and how do you make the least number of rules which motivate them to do that activity that's fun. And there are a lot of ways to have fun, you know. Sitting down and puzzling out a puzzle is fun, you know. So that's one way to have fun. But there are a lot of things that get in the way of that. So figuring out, you know, what's getting in the way of the fun, how do you get rid of that, get rid of everything that's not fun, and how do you have the least amount of rules to get people into that fun. So I look at it a lot like what's just resonating with people. So when we tested, let's say, Wits and Wagers, we tested at churches, we tested at frat houses, we tested, you know, drinking with boys, with kids. So we've tested in all these groups, and you can kind of do a Venn diagram of like, what was fun for these different groups, what was not fun for these different groups, and try to find that section in the center where it's like, this is an activity that's really just fun for a lot of people.
I was wondering about the fact that a lot of, when you look at a lot of those party games, they tend to be about like drinking and sex. I mean, there's just a ton of those, and there's nothing wrong with either of those activities. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to sit down at a table with my kids. Like, my daughter got me Cards Against Humanity. She wasn't quite 14, you know, and that was what she got me for my birthday or Christmas. So I'm like, I don't want to play this with you. You know, and my son, who's even younger, would go, I want to play, and I go, no, you just stay out of the room. It's kind of awkward, and I feel awkward sitting down at a table with people, even if they're kind of friends of mine or whatever, and have an activity like that, because you just don't know who you might be offending or whatever, you know. So that I'm just surprised at how many of the games that I've seen in that party area. It's like half or more, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's a huge. I'd say the fastest growing section in the board game industry right now. So I think it was estimated last year growing at like 128%. And this is last year, so it's been growing that same rate for several years, I'm sure. But I mean, there's a whole new section at Target. I don't know if you've seen it, but you know, they created a strategy section for a while, and now it's about the same size as the strategy section, maybe a little bit smaller. It's the same number of games, but the games are so small, and every game on the shelf looks like Cards Against Humanity. It's like a one-color box with text.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not so much a question, but I don't know what to say about that.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it, that's targeting a totally different group of people. So our company was set up to target moms. 80% of those target shoppers are moms. They were at least 20 years ago. Now I think it's 78%. And so they're shopping on the party game, the family game, the kid games, that whole aisle. But then that small section right there, that's millennials. Mm-hmm. And that's high school, college, and just after college. And they're going to that section. I don't know if you have a specific question. It's interesting. I mean, there's just I love the fact that what's happening there is where video games were kind of mass market for kids and people growing up. There's a whole generation that just grew up on video games. They're playing a lot of board games now. So to me, that's cool. I like that. And
right.
That's their entrance into kind of the board game world.
I just wonder how many people, you know, get involved in a game where, like, you know, they're invited over and they sit down and halfway through the first round they go like, I wish I hadn't shown up. So.
Yeah, I I don't know, I've never played Cards Against Humanity. My guess is there's a lot of people that do that in the first couple rounds, and then they kind of loosen up, and then they laugh a little bit, and they go, oh, okay, that was kind of fun, and they kind of get to know each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly meeting a big need, a huge need. You know, and it's not really like a strategy game. I see it as like a social icebreaker.
Yeah.
Breaking down barriers, kind of like beer. I think in fact, Luke would probably know this. There was a big, huge, I know you've been in the industry for a while, but there was a saying in the industry like, don't try to sell board games to college kids. And because any spare money they have goes to beer. And I think Cards Against Humanity proved that there are beer substitutes out there, or actually beer accentuators. It works well with beer too. But their beer money can go to, and I think it's doing the same thing. It's breaking down those social barriers. The same thing, that the reason that they're putting all this money into beer is because there's awkwardness going on. They just want to break down the social barriers and have fun with people.
So you made a comment a few seconds ago that you designed Wits and Wagers for moms.
For moms.
Well, but my actual question
Yeah,
is.
I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
But is there a plan for an adult Wits and Wagers? I mean, certainly there's no shortage of questions that can be asked, and you know, like you said, there's a huge growing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want to write questions for us?
What? That would be an interesting company meeting, I suppose. We're all going to brainstorm.
We are doing an After Dark version of Say Anything.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about it, but we don't have any plans. So, and so let me just even go to that a little bit, because it's going to yours. So we've had, the last couple of years, people just keep coming to us and saying, why aren't you doing an After Dark version of Say Anything? Why aren't you doing it? So, I mean, there's just such a huge demand. Now, I think we're reaching a tipping point there where there's a whole glut, and I think now they're saying, oh, okay, we don't need any more of this stuff. But there was about 3 or 4 years where they just kept asking for us to do that.
So I'm relatively new to this, so advice for people entering the industry as designers would be what what's the best plan of attack, what did you experience when you were doing that?
So yeah, let's see, the industry is very different from when I started. So Kickstarter being around is one, and then just kind of the fact that the market's really blown up. It was really more of a hobby niches, and now there's a lot more opportunity. So I think the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do you want to be a game designer or a publisher? That's where I would start. And if you want to be a publisher, you're not going to design as many games as you'd like. Until maybe 15 years into it, I'm still hoping. So that's the first question. You can kickstart and decide that you don't really want to be a business owner, but you've got to then have like an exit strategy. You've got to just say, okay, I'm doing this to build up a brand, and then I'm gonna pitch it to someone else, and then I'm gonna be a game designer. So if you choose to be a game designer, I mean, in either case, you're gonna want to build a brand. So figuring out how to, if you're a game designer, you're building relationships with publishers, and that means understanding who they are, what they're looking for, why they like specific games, and so you're building relationships with as many publishers as you can, and you're honing the craft of game design, and there's a lot to learn about game design.
Have you seen that people do Kickstarters and then afterwards they transition that and sell it to a publisher, or what's the?
Happens all the time. Yeah, I can just name a whole bunch of games. So like on the party game side, the meta game Buffalo has monikers. You guys know monikers? I feel out pretty big. I mean, that's celebrities. That's Buffalo Games now. Publishes that. I mean, you can just go to tons of games that started on Kickstarter and then later got acquired, I guess, or probably just picked up and licensed in most of those cases.
Had you had your question answered? Because you had your hand up for a while.
Oh, I just had a comment on the other people where they were saying you need a dark version of Say Anything, but I can already say that game already is that version, because you have a question in there that's, what is the thing you most don't want in your mouth? And 4 guys in the room, and you can draw pictures. I don't know what other people's groups are, but that's.
And I to this day think apples to apples is funnier than Cards Against Humanity.
Accidental dirtiness is more funny than just cards that say something dirty, I think.
Shut up is definitely a wonderful piece on that.
Yeah, I think one is more of like say anything allows for creativity, and that was designed so that you could play it at church and you could play it at bachelor parties. You know, like it was designed to mold to the group. Whereas Cards Against Humanity kind of does one thing and it does it really well. And the problem with say anything if you're playing in colleges is asking those people to be creative if they're already a little bit socially nervous is tougher than just saying, here we got a bunch of pre-made jokes for you, just throw the card down and laugh. So it doesn't do the same thing that Cards Against Humanity does. And there's clearly a bigger need for Cards Against Humanity. Though we have sold 700,000 copies of Say Anything, so we're meeting a need too. And hopefully, you know, we're hoping our game will be more evergreen, and you can take that game and go to church, and you can take it and go to a frat party, and it plays out great in both cases.
Now, Dominic, you say you market games, you try to sell games to moms.
Well, I want you to
No.
I want to take that.
No. I think it adds into a great question because it's a fairly well-known thing that a lot of what the Monopoly people do. Is it Hasbro now that has Monopoly? I can't remember.
Yeah.
That their concept is they want to sell it to the moms and the grandmoms because they're going to look at it and say, oh, it's a game. My kid likes games. It's got this IP. They'll sell it. Hasbro knows nobody's going to play it or it's going to get played once. It's going to sit on the shelf. So they're making money by not selling to the people who are playing it, but the parents who are going to buy the game.
It's a gift. But the need they're meeting with like a Star Wars Monopoly is a gift.
Yeah, but you selling to moms is something completely different. And so I was just, how does that work? I know because you want people to play the games.
So we sell in the hobbies. We sell in 3 different channels. We sell in toy stores, and there's a different need there. We sell in hobby games, and there's a different need there, hobby stores, and then we sell in the mass market. And so in the mass market, the need was, I'm a mom, and people are coming together over the holidays, and I want us to get together and have fun together, and sometimes like over Thanksgiving or you haven't seen the family in like months, or even that might be the only time of year, and so a game that's very simple and gets people talking, breaking down some barriers, that's what they were looking for. Or they're looking for, I want to get my kids talking and I want to break them away from the TV screen, and so that was the need that was often being met, and that's why at Target we're selling 80% of our product or 75% during, the holiday seasons, November and December. The need in the toy stores is, I've got a 6-year-old birthday, I've got like birthday parties every single weekend or, 3 a month. And I need a $20 or less gift item to bring to these parties. Like that's mostly the need there. But also, I'm a mom and I'm really busy and I want to be able to put this thing in my purse and take it someplace and I want to be able to say, blah, 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 they're asking me for this and can you get me water and I got to read the rules, okay, and I'm done with the rules, okay, and now I teach it, and now they're playing and now I'm running over here and helping someone who's crying, and so that's the need that it's being met in that area. So, when you're designing games, the first thing to do is say who's playing it and how's it fitting into their lives, and so then, I often call the hobby world like boys in the basement, and that's changing. But it used to be just boys in the basement, and that need is just a completely different need. You can give them back 20 years ago, a 4-hour game that they can hang out with and play, So really, it's only one part of our company that was like targeting moms.
But just from a business perspective, what you're saying there, what I'm getting at is, you go into the design saying who's going to play this game, and then when it comes to marketing, it's who's going to buy this game, which may not be the people who are going to play it.
And it's possible, like with the gifts idea,
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about, and I'm not sure that everybody does.
Yeah. And in a game like Wits and Wagers, where we tested and Say Anything with so many different groups, we designed it specifically because it just resonates with people in so many different areas. You still have to choose who you're marketing to. And so now that the millennials have grown to be such a huge game buying population, like they're not playing Say Anything in Wits and Wagers, and it's because you just look at the packaging. Nick can tell you this. you look at the packaging and it just looks like something your mom might take out over the holidays. So we're doing the packaging now because the need of the millennials gets met by that game, but the packaging doesn't communicate it. to them.
With the new packaging, is it actually going to fit in the mom's purse? Because I'm not sure I could envision Winston Wagers fitting in a purse.
So that's for the toy stores. Happy Salmon fits in mom's purse.
Right.
And that's being sold in toy stores. But what they're buying, when they're buying a game for the holidays, that's not going in their purse. It's going under the Christmas tree, or it's just, going on their game shelf.
So to that end, is the game design and the mechanics and the playability about the end user and the illustration and graphic design work about the marketing?
I wouldn't say 100%. Like that's largely true, but I wouldn't say 100% because the graphic design is part of the whole experience of playing the game too. And so the mechanics help define the play space and the experience that you're going to have, but so does the componentry and the graphic design. They both help create the experience. Now the box packaging, that's mostly marketing. And so like in the mass market, the way we look at it is, for marketing to moms, not to millennials, what's obnoxious enough that you're going to notice on the shelf, and that's going to largely be, change every few years because you're going to look and see what's the color that everyone's doing, and you want to do something that's different, so it kind of stands out and you notice it when you're walking by. Then you have to have a tagline which hooks you, so that you're like, oh, that could be fun, what's this? And you flip it over on the back, and then the back has to make you go, yep, I see how that game is fun, and I can think of a time when I might play this in my life. And you need to get all those things to happen for someone to buy it.
But you're doing all that, ensuring that reflects the contents of the box as well. You're not going completely...
lying about what's inside.
No, but then you're going in a completely different direction. The one game that stands up to me that I played recently where the box had nothing to do with the container, I want to say, was Blood Rage. Is that the one where you're the guy, you're either the gross aliens, the monster, or becoming to kill them all, because it's a game about, I guess, species eradication?
It's not Blood Rage, no.
Cry Havoc. Boom. Cry Havoc is the one I'm thinking of. Do this all the time. Yeah, Cry Havoc. It's like, oh, look at this box. You open it up, it's like, this looks nothing like what's inside. But I'm maybe open the box. But your strategy.
So my strategy is never to trick people.
No, not to trick. But like for this redesign, are you redesigning all the components, everything else inside, or are you just basically re-emphasizing existing elements within the game on the box?
So the redesign that we're doing right now is for Say Anything.
Right.
So it's our 10-year anniversary edition, and we are adding new content because on the marketing side, you can't get anyone to review it if you don't have new content. So on the beachhead hobbyists who are interested in new things coming out, if you want to get any of the reviewers to review it, there's got to be something more than just packaging for them to look at it. So there are new questions in there. There's also some of the reasons for the new questions is times have changed. So there's a different appetite now than there was. So for instance, when I first designed the game, the first question of every card in Say Anything is like, what's the tastiest ice cream flavor? Or what's the best cereal? Things, personal preferences that you can take in church and grandmother will not feel threatened or like you're outing her on anything. And
you haven't been my grandmother.
Fuck you and your corn balls. Ooh, I don't know your grandmother. But those questions now are so tame that I think they're probably too tame, so we're removing a lot of those.
Are you changing the graphic elements within the game?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a complete redesign.
The graphic elements and the questions that aren't pertinent right now, so that makes sense, that aren't like useful right now, and then adding another type of question and just adding some more content so we can get the reviewers to review it.
But with the ultimate goal of being able to have the whole thing appeal more to millennials.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But we still want it to be played at the kitchen table too. So like the aesthetic of Moms is gonna, in our belief, increasingly get influenced by their kids, who are telling them what's cool and not cool, because they don't want to be lame. They want to be cool to their kids. They want to hang out with their kids and have fun with their kids. So they're getting influenced now by that generation and their aesthetic. Got a lot of people now. I'll start with John, because I saw it. Is it John, right?
Joe.
Joe, sorry, Joe.
So you said marketing a bunch of times, but like, so when I was a kid, like I Saturday morning cartoons, you'd see board game commercials every so often, and I feel like that's not a thing anymore. So like,
You're still watching Saturday morning cartoons?
What's that? Yeah, watching Saturday morning cartoons is not a thing anymore. What marketing has worked best for you? Like what? I'm sure there's lots of places that you can advertise, but like what's worked best for you?
So they do board games. Spin Master. Spin Master is the master of 15-second board game television commercials. Yeah, and Hasbro does it. So you're wondering what we've done? I mean,
Yeah, what's worked best for you guys?
so every channel has kind of its own drivers. So in the hobby world, I think reviewers are the biggest driver, and then going to conventions, getting people to play the game. Those are probably the two things that are most important in the hobby world. Kickstarter, great way to market your game. Gets a lot of eyeballs.
You were talking about the design of a box. I'm at Grand Con. I'm working a Renegade booth for them. Didn't have time to look at anybody's games. I walked by a game called Evolution. They had it laying out on the table. I looked at the box and I bought everything. Okay, now, let me tell you something.
No, I'm leaving.
Okay, let me tell you why I did it. I am a female mother. And I looked at that box and I looked at that game and said, my God, I'm going to love it. I brought it home. I love it. I can't wait for the next thing. And the next thing's coming out, Waters. But
there's the game
I
design right
know
there.
he has it. He's going to let me play it this weekend. I love it. But I'm the mother who doesn't have time for anything. I was so busy that weekend, and I liked the box. And it sold me the game before I even knew what it was about. And I played it, and I love it. So,
Cool.
you know, and that's the
awesome.
kind of person I am. I'm too busy to pay attention, but if I walk by something, yes, there I want it, I buy it.
So
You
one
know?
of the reasons why we have Evolution in our product line is because the hobby world started taking off and started driving enough product through Barnes & Nobles that Target started carrying hobby games. And they started coming to us increasingly like, why are you not giving us hobby games? Like, we know you're hobby gamers, you know the market, give us a hobby game. And we kept saying, well, we don't have a brand in the hobby world anymore. So we've got to build a brand there before we can give you a game that'll move on your shelf at all. And the reason we chose Evolution is because we thought it was a brand that we could sell to hobby gamers and we could sell to moms. We thought it had crossover potential because the theme is cool for boys. You know, it's got carnivores and there's attacking and then there's the science. And then for the moms, it's a theme that's relatable, like it's real life. It's an ecosystem that makes sense. There's science in it. There's education value, and it's not weird like women in chainmail bikinis, which makes no sense to my wife, you know. And so we chose specifically a theme that we thought had broad reach.
And Mom's like easy games. I got into gaming, and some of the games my son made me play, I'm going, oh my gosh, I can't figure that out. He beats me. So any game I can get that I think I can beat him, and as a matter of fact, I beat him the first time we played.
Wow. So you call Evolution an easy game?
It's for me, because I can beat my son, and he's hard to beat.
Because for my parents, it's not an easy game at all. That game is so complicated. Like, whoever would play
No, but
something
if I
like
can
this.
beat my son, I'm doing good.
That's cool. All right.
So for someone trying to enter the hobby game, probably through Kickstarter and self-publishing, I'm an entrepreneur, so I understand that element of it, but how would one define success? Like in 2 years' time, let's say from release of Kickstarter, how many games sold or copies sold and distribution is saying, okay, I've done this, I'm on the way to making a company out of this, versus, well, I made this little game and it was a fun hobby, and, you know, I need to keep my day job.
Okay, that's a good question. From like being able to quit your day job.
I feel like you've really, like, you've made a mark. You're not just one of, one game out of all the hobby games that were released, like you made a little.
So out of the 4,000 games that are getting released, if you sell 2,000 to 5,000, you're just right in line with like a lot of, like hundreds and hundreds of games. So I'd say at this point, if you want to make a mark, 25 is minimum, 25,000 minimum, but 50,000, but you can't quit your day job with 25,000. So 50,000, and you probably have a big enough brand that you could then do the next game and kind of keep building on it. I don't know, Luke, do you have insight into that? I'm just throwing a number out of it.
Yeah, always define success yourself. So, I don't know what your day job is.
Well, quitting the
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Maybe your day job is a high-powered attorney, and then 25,000 copies isn't going to do it. I would not expect your first game to do anything on that level, right? Your first game is about building your brand, as you mentioned before. But whatever you define success as, that's how you know if you're there. Some people think they want to get their first game and do 100,000 copies. That's just a different business plan than the first game, 3,000 copies. And there's a beauty in Kickstarter. Once you're at game 6, you have a whole lot of backstock. Every time you're on another Kickstarter campaign, you're selling old backstock direct.
So if you hit 25,000 copies distributed in 2 years, you're on the way.
Yeah, that's a good size hobby only hit.
Yeah.
Only in the hobby, I think 25,000 is a big hit.
But God,
So-
how many people do that a year? A couple? From Kickstarter from the ground up?
From the ground up, I mean their very first.
Or just early, that aren't an established publisher? Yeah.
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
25 is a lot. That's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really hard.
And that's $1 million Kickstarter.
Is it? Yeah. But well, he was saying over 2 years, so the Kickstarter could be less. But yeah.
Yeah, remember, if you're going to
You know,
get
it's
into,
also-
if you're going to get into distribution too, that means there's a whole other effort you have to put in, right? You have to work with distributors, and you have to talk to retail stores, but you don't do any of that through Kickstarter. So there's another.
And none of them are going to carry it unless you're creating demand for it.
Yeah, and talking to them. Publishers are distributors are right now cutting off lower tier publishers. They're just saying, we're not even going to carry you in retail stores. They have too much inventory, too many games being made. And that bar is getting higher and higher. So even PSI, the distributor that used to be the distributor for the little guy, they're cutting off the little guys now. So getting into distribution is pretty
They're
tough.
cutting off big guys now.
Yeah, they are.
Well, yeah, we're leaving them, and so are a lot of people because they work with Asmodee so much, and so they basically just Asmodee's everything to them now.
Yep.
So now I'm curious, what's your solution? Are you going to self-distribute?
Oh no, we just aren't using PSI to rep us.
Okay.
I mean, we do go direct to a lot of accounts, but there's reasons to go through reps. So
Sure.
we're just looking for other people to represent us that don't have Ticket to Ride, Carcassonne, Pandemic. I mean, you name it. Why are they Settlers? Why are they? They're just not pushing our product the way that we would like to see our product be pushed. Heather?
When I was talking to you earlier, I think you said your business partner talks to Target, like he talks directly to Target?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I flew into all the Target meetings, for the first 5 of them or so, 6. But my job in the company is product development and marketing, and kind of the way that works together, and maybe business strategy. His is sales and operations. So yeah, so I think next Thursday he'll be in St. Paul, Minneapolis, meeting with the Target buyer along with someone else in our company.
What is it like to work with them?
Who, Target?
To work with Target.
It's
yeah.
been awesome. Now things are changing now because they're getting so much pressure from Amazon. So back when we first got into Target, there was no pressure from Amazon, and we were not a commodity. People bought Wits and Wagers because they wanted Wits and Wagers, and there wasn't enough great products out there that they had much power. And so we sold into Target for more money than we sold into any other store anywhere. Well, actually, Walmart gave us the best pricing, then Target, and then everything else. So our experience is really different from used to be different than the squeezing on price. That's increasingly changing now because they got to compete with Amazon. And Amazon is just works off razor thin margins. They got enormous reach, and they're growing. They're rocking the world. They're changing things.
Something I've heard about working with somebody like Target is that if you sell a huge lot of games to them and they don't feel it's selling, they might give it back to you. Or
Well, if that's what the contract says. So our contract with them, they held all the risk. So then they discount it And they could ask us to take some of the loss, but they don't. They ask, so they don't. No, that's all their loss. Now they do a TPC, temporary price cut, and we will, we'll ask for those. We ask for like shelf space, we ask for circulars, and we do pay for some of the marketing that we get through them. But their discounts with our contract, their discounts is just all on them. But that just depends. That just depends what your contract says. What you negotiate for.
So if you, well, since that's what your contract says, your advice would be if you're going to go with some kind of channel like that, you would make sure your contract protects you.
Well, so what's going to happen is you might come up there and say, no, it's going to sell, and they're going to say, I really don't think it's going to, and then they say, well, I'm going to put all the risk on you then. If it doesn't sell, then you take the product back and we don't pay you. So if you're going to do that kind of risk, you better have a really smart marketing plan. You better really understand the industry well enough to take that kind of risk. And so that's the type of thing you do because you're wanting to prove yourself to Target. But I wouldn't take that kind of risk and you're really sure you have your ducks in a row. Because it's risky.
But it's possible that you'll take something to them and they will believe it will sell and they will take on the risk.
So it's possible. I'll tell you.
Don't know until you talk to them about it.
I just told the story last night, and so I'm remembering this story. The very first time we went into Target, I think it was 2004, maybe it was 2005 before Weights and Wagers was released. We had like a prototype of Weights and Wagers and pitched it to the Target buyer, and at the end of the meeting, he put his head down and he was like trying to figure out what he wanted to say. He's like, so I really like this game. I don't get pitched stuff like this. This is creative. So what he would get pitched a lot back then is, it's Star Wars Monopoly. It's, whatever. It's a Hollywood licensed something. And so he's like, it's really creative. It's really good. Like this looks fun. I like this game. He's like, here's my problem. If I carried it right now, it wouldn't sell. Like people wouldn't buy it. In my experience, there are only 3 things that are going to sell a game here. 1 is a Hollywood license. 2 is a $1 million+ television campaign or national campaign. And 3 is grassroots support where you've sold minimum 50 to 100,000 copies. And so you're building up a brand through the grassroots. It's like, those are the only reason this is going to sell. So he said, so what you need to do is one of those 3 things, and you're not going to do the Hollywood license, you're probably not going to do a $1 million campaign, so you need to sell 50 to 100,000 copies of this and then come back, So that was what he tasked us with. And that's basically the route we went. By the time we got in there, I don't think we had sold 50,000 copies. They tested us in about 100 stores, and somehow we did well. Now, I did post it on the Board Game Geek, and there were a lot of people that went to the Targets and found him, and we hadn't posted a list. Because he came back to us at Toy Fair, and he was like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if you got your relatives to go into every single Target. I'm like, I'm not my relatives. No.
He said to go to grassroots, and he did. Go to grassroots. Yeah.
You're saying people went to Target and said, do you have Weights and Wagers for you, basically?
I think a lot, I don't know, I really don't know how many people in the Board Game Geek. I mean, a lot of people posted, oh yeah, I went and bought it, oh I went and bought it, oh I went. So I don't know what those numbers actually did and how much they inflated things.
So that was after it was in the store?
That was in 100 stores, test stores, randomly. And then they said, well, we're going to roll it out nationwide, so can you get us, I forget what he said, 50,000 copies by whatever, and I was like, oh yeah. And afterwards it's like doing the math, it was like, Satish, we're gonna need about $400,000. And we need it in like very soon. How do we do this? Yeah. Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, we have access to capital. We can do all that. Don't worry, we'll raise money. and we did obviously, but it's a lot easier to raise money when you say Target already has the order for you.
Yeah.
And then. So our relationship with them was great. So I think the dynamics at that time is Hasbro had a real lock on the board game aisle. They had what's called the Hasbro 40, and they owned so many games. And so they could charge like huge amounts of money to Target and Walmart. And so their margins were ridiculous. And so Target and the big box stores didn't like kind of the monopoly that Hasbro had. Hasbro would say, you know, oh, do you want to carry Monopoly? Do you want to carry Scrabble? Do you want to carry Clue? Do you want to carry Yahtzee? Well, if you want to, you know, so they had a lot of power. And so I think they wanted to help build out some of these other independents. So they created like they really worked with us as a long-term plan. They believed in the game. They believed in our work ethic. And you know, we barely made the cut, every year, and then like the buyer left, and the new buyer would come in and would look at the numbers and go, what the hell, why are we carrying Wits and Wagers? And they'd be like, well, we think we might just cut it. We're like, whoa, we just hired people, no, you can't cut us, you know, okay, we're gonna do this. And so then we did a national radio marketing campaign, you know, like, and so we kept upping the game until our numbers grew into what was really needed to stay on the shelves at Target. But so our relationship with Target was unbelievably awesome. Now, the buyers change every 3 years. I think the current buyer has been there longer than any buyer ever. I think it might be his 5th year now. But so you build these relationships, and if they really like the product and they believe that you guys are putting what needs to be done to grow that brand, they like not having every game owned by Hasbro.
Does Target go to cons? Do they go to Gamma or Toy Fair?
They have.
Yeah.
They have the last couple. I'm not sure if they went last year to Gen Con, but the year before, they even had a booth, and they had a whole, you know, because they did all those Target exclusives, and then they had all those people put Target logos in their booth. But I think they backed off that a little bit. I think they decided that's not the route for them.
You know, a few years ago, Target hit up the trade day and come pretty hard.
What's that?
I said, I know a few years ago, Target hit up the trade day at Gen Con really hard. They didn't have booth presence, but they have their buyer there talking to companies about games.
Did you know if this year was Satish meeting with Target there?
I didn't see Target there, but I was pulled up in the hotel room.
So Satish the last couple of years was going to Target to meet with Barnes & Noble, Toys R Us, Target. Not sure if that happened this year. So yeah, I mean, you know, the market changes quickly, but for a while, like a lot of the shelf, that strategy shelf was the fastest growing shelf in the board game aisle for a bunch of years, and that was driven by hobby. Now the fastest is kind of the party game, the drinking game shelf, you know, and so that's driven probably more by PAX, I would say, than Gen Con, kind of more of a video game crowd that's starting to play board games. So I don't really know how all that's shifting. That's really Satish's side of things. So I just hear about it, you know.
I noticed recently that minis are becoming popular. Little tiny games that you can throw in your pocket. Is that a new trend, or?
Micro games?
Micro games, yeah. The little teeny games. I could see me throwing a bunch of those my first. I have them with me.
My wife always has love with her.
I mean, they're really cool.
Yeah.
And it's new. I mean, usually games are huge boxes and,
Yeah.
you know.
I think
is
that goes
a-
along with your marketing to the moms. Because I know when I'm nannying, I always have games in my backpack that I can take out. I can explain to the kids in 5 minutes, sit down and play a game in between practice or at halftime, something that just to keep them occupied. And those micro games work well for that sector.
Yeah.
Well, they also work for like broke people. Because I just got out of grad school and I'll go to the game shop and you walk around and it's like, yes, that game looks awesome, but that one's $10. So,
Yeah, and I think there's also increasing demand for smaller packaging because millennials aren't saving money for buying like houses, and they've got smaller spaces, and they're more like the experience, and they want a smaller shelf space. You know, like in the hobby world, on like Board Game Geek, they used to be screaming for smaller boxes because they had like 600 games. But we just ignore them because that's such a small segment. Who we were listening to is Target that was saying, I can't sell a small game because it'll get lost on the shelf. So if you're not going to have a box this big, don't even talk to us. So they were defining the box shelves for a lot. But so definitely the drivers of like the size of the box is changing. And like if you look at, I mean, I can just show you pictures right now of the Target aisle, and if you go to the mom aisle, like they're big, huge boxes, and because they're going to have 7 games in their game closet. And then if you look at like the millennial aisle, it's just these little tiny boxes all smashed in there with like, and some of the shelves, like they created, so a lot of the standard box sizes were created by big box stores because that's the size of the shelf, and so that's the size you make. You know, if you made the box smaller, that was all wasted space, and they're looking at how much money are they making per cubic foot in their store, and that's just wasted space. So you could make a stand-up thin box, like apples to apple, and put it in there and not be wasting space. But that's defining a lot of the box sizes traditionally, and that's changing a little bit.
Now, how big would the market have to be for you to begin doing 2 different box sizes for the same game? Because I know I used to work in a factory and we're putting these together for Walmart because they had different box size categories or different packaging requirements for putting this together for this store. Like,
how big would it have to be? Or?
Yeah, like how much business would you have to do in a specific market to really split that?
Probably not a whole lot, because there's not a whole lot of work. I mean, I'd want a print size. I mean, the biggest like work, like the biggest cost to the company is like get all these people and they get off their project and they go into this project, you know, and then they come back, and then there's the supply chain and you got to manage another SKU. But I'd say, you know, 15,000, 20,000 probably could do it, because it's really just taking the same packaging, the same elements. It's not a huge project. It's just.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the development process. Like how long was the development cycle for some of your games?
Okay, yeah. So, Wits and Weight. So, okay, I would say a lot of the testing that I had to do early in my career, so 15 years ago, I don't have to do quite as much now because I already know that's too complicated. That's too complicated. No, that's too complicated. Whereas I had to test all those back, you know, 10, 15 years ago and just be like, really? This is complicated? How could this be complicated? Okay, let's try it again. So some of that early stuff is gone, but with Wits and Wagers, we played with 500 different people. I played with 500 different people, me personally. The game was played over 1,000 times, and then with a lot of different segments. I'd say same thing, I played maybe closer to 250, 300 times with probably 300, 400 people. This latest game that we're working on right now, which is Super Wits and Wagers, it is a Party game. TM, Party TM. Party game of strategy. That is one of the most difficult designs we've ever worked on, because anytime you're adding strategy to Party, it's doing the exact opposite of what the Party's doing. So the Party, the rules have to just disappear so people can have fun and socially interact. And strategy, you often get to that with rules and accounting and moving and push this here and push this here. And so figuring out how to get the strategy without all those complicated rules and without all the fiddly things has been really difficult. So that game we started working on in about 2013 to be our 10-year anniversary edition for Wits and Wagers, and we called it the Epic Geek Edition at that point. I'd say we started working on it a lot in 2014, and then it just wasn't getting to where we wanted it to be, so then we decided it was going to be our 11-year anniversary edition. This one goes to 11, and then that it just kind of failed, and so we've just been working on it, and now it's been like all-encompassing for me. We play several times a week, and we've been doing that for a long time. So yeah, for me, my development cycle is extra long, and I want to know, there's two things that I'm looking at. What's the experience of learning the game, and then what's the experience of playing it for the 5th, 6th, 10th time, you know, and 15th time and 20th time. And they're both really, really important if you want an evergreen. So, you know, if you're going to have to choose between those two, choose for the ease of learning, because in general, people are going to play the game 1 to 3 times. If you just think about the games that you played and think about the games on your shelf, if you played a game 10 times, that's a lot. You know, so don't optimize it for the 50th time. If you have to choose between those two, optimize it for the 3rd time. Because if you optimize it for the first time, and people are like, oh yeah, that was fun, I'm done, they're not going to buy it. But if you optimize it for like 3 to 5 times, they'll go, oh, that was fun, yeah, they're interested, and they might buy it, and and then, but what you'd rather do is not choose. What you'd rather do is make something that's really, really clean and simple, and that has to do with the number of rules and the intuitiveness of the rules. And if you're giving it a theme, how well the theme works with the rules. Because a theme really helps it to just explain the game. So like our Super Wits and Wagers, you have characters, and we spend a lot of time working on the characters, and how do we balance the mechanics, and then how do we explain it, and then just do iterations, and then for me. So here's what you should be thinking about when you're playtesting. There should really only be 2 things that you try to find out: what was fun and what was not fun. And try to make sure that your playtesters aren't trying to solve issues. You'll solve the issues. You want to know what the issues are. You want to know what are the speed bumps and what's fun. And they're going to always say, oh, what would be cool? You could have bombs that explode, and just keep trying to bring that back and go, okay, why would that be fun? Like, try to figure out what they want that's going to be fun, and try to figure out. And a lot of times they don't know what all the speed bumps are, and a lot of times people think they think the rules are over here, and they're talking about the speed bumps in the game. But the rules are one of the biggest speed bumps. And so just watch when their eyes glaze over, and watch when they say, wait, is this do this again? What does this one do again? All those things. Okay, there's a problem here. Everyone's asking, what does this do again? It's not intuitive enough. The theme isn't meshing enough. There are reasons for all those things. Now, at some point, you get to a point where you're like, this is as good as I can get it. Like every new improvement takes like twice as long as the last improvement. So it's just exponential in the amount of time that you take to get to the next level.
Getting on time. I'm
done.
So Dominic will be here all weekend. Maybe you can convince him to let you play Kabloogie at his table. But I know if you have individual questions, he'll be happy to probably continue answering them, especially if you play Super Wits and Wagers.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.